This is Co-op HD1 HD3 Hornsby, radio for people, not for profit. Welcome to Volumes, the Austin Public Library radio show. Each week, we explore how your library is more than books. The library is knowledge, technology, and inspiration for our community. Welcome. We are your hosts today, Kanya Lyons and
I'm Mike Wheat.
Today on the show, we are going to chat with Reference Librarian Maggie Bond about the Romance Book Club, which starts at the Central Library this November, which is soon. When does it start, Maggie?
The first day is going to be November 14th, so very soon.
Next week, right?
Next week.
Yay!
Are you trying to make November 14th the new Valentine's Day?
It will be.
Give us a year.
So welcome, Maggie. This is your first time on the radio show, so let's hear a little bit about who you are. Where do you hail from?
I'm originally from Berkeley, California, but I'm hoping that all you lovely Texans don't hold that against me.
Of course not. You got here to Texas as quickly as you could, I'm sure.
Of course.
Yeah, we're happy to have you here.
So what brought you to Austin on that note?
Well, I originally came to Austin to go to grad school at UT Austin, and then I fell in love, and I got this amazing job, and I just kind of stayed.
Like so many people that come to Austin to go to school.
Many.
Yeah, you can't come here and visit. It's like a Lay's potato chip.
So becoming a librarian brought you to Austin. What led you to want to become a librarian?
Well, I actually went to UT Austin to become an archivist,
Oh.
but I found that I didn't want to spend all day working with records. I wanted to spend all day working with people. And so...
It sounded good until you saw the archival rooms.
Until I took Archives 1 and I realized that it was not for me.
Like,
Good
I like
for
old
all
stuff.
Of you archivists, yes.
But not all day.
Well, public library is definitely the right place to be if you want to work with people.
Yeah.
It's true.
It's a people job.
Yeah, and your job, you're a reference librarian, so you largely deal with people who need access to our databases, computers, etc. I mean, anything else that...
That's correct. I do a lot of teaching on the job, which I really love. A lot of trying to get rid of that technology gap that mirrors our socioeconomic gap in so many ways. And then I'm also pleased to get to do a lot of social media for the library.
That's right.
Yes, and that is a lot of fun too. To run the Twitter and help with the Instagram.
You manage the Twitter account. You're the primary force behind the tweets from the Austin Public Library.
About half
she's
of the
our
week
tweeter.
it's me.
Our tweeterer.
Our tweeterer.
So if you're just joining us, this is Volumes, the Austin Public Library radio show on Co-op 91.7 FM. And we're also streaming at koop.org. There are details about our show at library.austintexas.gov/volumes.
That's right. And we're talking with Reference Librarian Maggie Bond about the Romance Book Club. What motivated you to start the Romance Book Club? Sorry, my audio went out.
Actually, I started the Romance Book Club because I thought to myself, what would I want to come to as a customer? What would motivate me to be off work, to be tired, and actually still make my way to the library to go have some fun? And after a lot of brainstorming, it turned out that the answer was hanging out in a luxurious rooftop garden, eating snacks, and talking about sexy books with my friends. So the Romance Book Club was born.
So that's what y'all are going to do?
Yes.
Awesome.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
That's like a guilty pleasure, right?
Yes, it is very much. I almost thought about calling it the Guilty Pleasure Book Club. But Romance Book Club is more clear, and we can always come up with our own name together on the first day.
Now, in the reference area at the downtown library, there lives a cutout of Fabio. Will he be making a presence at your romance novel book club?
Oh, yes, Fabio will absolutely be at my Romance Book Club. It's been funny having him around the office because people can't help but take selfies with Fabio. And I feel like if even we can't resist, then our romance aficionados are also not going to be able to resist. So if I have the time, he might even emerge in various outfits over the months. Yes.
Oh, like a
Our
paper
own
doll?
Paper doll, yes.
I like that I just see him in new places every other week.
So if the first meeting is next week, what is the book that y'all are going to be talking about?
So the very first meeting of our Romance Book Club is no homework, just like the first day. So you don't have to have read anything. You just need to show up and be excited to meet other people who want to talk about romance with you.
Oh, well, I could even do that.
Yes, you could.
That's exciting.
So you're not specifically looking at a author this first meeting or anything?
So we're not specifically looking at an author this first meeting. At our next meeting, we're going to be talking about Tessa Dare's Romancing the Duke, which is one of my favorites, and it's very much what you think of when you think of a romance novel. But it's going to be a lot of fun. And actually, I reached out to our little event page Facebook group and said, hey, Tessa Dare is willing to answer 3 of our discussion questions so that we can hear her answers in December when we talk about this book.
Well, that's a great start.
So, yes. And so we're waiting on her answers now.
Ooh la la.
Yes.
So, are there many local romance authors in Austin?
There actually are, and they have been so incredibly supportive. Catherine Maxwell, I believe it's either Kathy or Catherine, has a lot of really excellent, once again, historical romances, and she has been so supportive and so awesome and helping me make connections with other romance authors.
Well, myself, and I'm sure some other listeners out there have no idea what that means. Like period piece romance novels, are they fictionalized around actual events?
There are actually many, many different genres of romance novels. Everybody has their own thing that works for them.
Subgenres within the genre.
Subgenres within subgenres within subgenres. But historical is one of the big ones. It's just any place in time, but usually we want something around when Jane Austen was around. That's the most popular, is 19th century. And then there's contemporary romance, which is exactly what it sounds like. There's Amish romance, which is particularly fascinating because it is written almost exclusively by people who are not Amish themselves.
Okay.
Oh,
I was wondering if you just
I
had
know.
pages of blacked out words and stuff like that.
Oh no, just holding hands mostly.
Just lots of holding hands.
Just lots of holding hands.
Well, we're going to get back into the nitty gritty and talk a lot more about the Romance Book Club after we listen to an audio clip. But I wanted to just take one moment to mention that the library system, all of the libraries are going to be closed this Friday.
That's
Because
right.
we're observing Veterans Day. Veterans Day is actually on Saturday, but the city is observing it
We've got
on
some
Friday.
veterans who work on Friday, and they deserve a day off.
So the library will be open on Saturday, which is actual Veterans Day. So we just wanted to make sure people are aware. And then right after this, we are going to listen to a clip from John Henry Falk. It's a little audio clip where he's on the radio and he discusses freedom of speech in the American era of House Un-American Activities Committee in the mid-'70s. The interview took place in Waco, Texas, and the audio is actually provided by the Austin History Center, and there are details about that at austinhistorycenter.org.
Let's listen.
Tonight, FM 107 News presents a special report on John Henry Falk, the man and his ideas. Falk gained national recognition during the late 50s when he filed the libel and damage suit against Aware Incorporated. Aware was an anti-communist organization that practiced blacklisting members of the media through innuendo, half-truths, and untruths. John Henry Falk, in a landmark case, was awarded $3.5 million in damages, the largest amount ever awarded in history. According to Falk, the jury deemed this necessary to end blacklisting forever. This was only one experience in the life of Falk that made him reevaluate his strong belief in the First Amendment, the individual freedoms guaranteed by law. Falk now has a 2-hour talk show on WRR-AM radio in Dallas, which is dedicated to the principles of the Bill of Rights and freedoms of the people. In an interview with 107 News after his speech Thursday morning, Falk talked about the importance of the free exchange of ideas. He explained that there was a need for a free flow of communication without the fear of being oppressed for expressing ideas.
In the last 25 years, we have fallen on pretty hard times, as Watergate illustrated, where we substituted epithet and name-calling and labels for a real exchange of ideas on issues that are of deep concern to the American people.
Well, how are people maintaining this equal amount of freedom? Is it by speaking out, and are people doing that more so today?
Oh, yes. And this gets back to my program that I'm doing in Dallas, this opening of the dialogue, encouraging people to speak out. See, our Constitution guarantees you the right to hold your opinion and to express it without any being intimidated or harassed. It doesn't guarantee you, it doesn't say that you have to be right. You can be wrong. I've been wrong as often as I've been right in various opinions that I've held or ideas that I've held.
Why then do you think that many people are afraid to speak out for things that they do believe in?
Because a climate of fear was generated and very carefully manipulated in our society that repressed and made unpopular those who would express opinions that didn't follow the official line. And this had a chilling effect on the open dialogue in our society. And it was carefully manipulated by the government. For instance, long before Mr. Nixon got up his enemy list that shocked the American people. So the FBI and the House Un-American Activities Committee were keeping enemy lists. That, of course, was in clear violation of the constitutional mandate against bills of attainder.
Well, how can this process be reversed, that of fear and anxiety being removed from our society, thereby letting people speak out without fear of having something bad happen to them?
It can only be reversed by reflecting on what the founding fathers had about when they set up this government, what our compact of government really means. We, the peoples of the United States, do ordain and establish this Constitution. We have to open the dialogue so people will not only be free to think and to publish their thoughts without any fear of repression or intimidation or harassment, but won't even have to stop and ask themselves if they are free to do so.
My name is Blair Parsons, and I'm a reference librarian at the Central Library. Each week I highlight a few programs for adults that are happening around the Austin Public Library. Our full list of programs may be found on the library's events calendar. National Novel Writing Month, or NaNoWriMo, inspires novelists to begin their book each November. The Central Library will offer NaNoWriMo programs Wednesdays at 6 o'clock throughout November. Tonight, November 8th at 6 o'clock, local authors will lead writing workshops focused on plot development. The plot workshop for adults will be in the 4th floor reading room, and the plot workshop for teens will be in the 3rd floor youth and family atrium. The workshops begin at 6 o'clock tonight, November 8th at the Central Library. Saturday, November 11th, the St. John Branch Library will host the Community Core Sample Project, a collection of art pieces created by Steve Wyman and Beverly Penn for the opening of the St. John Community Center in 2002. Guided tours of the collection will be offered at 1:30 and 2:30, Saturday, November 11th at the St. John Branch Library.
Hey there, Austin. Teen Program Specialist Michael Harley from the Downtown Central Library here. This month, I'll be telling you all about the programming going on at the new Central Library, located off of 710 West Cesar Chavez Street. November is National Novel Writing Month, or NaNoWriMo for short. The library is here to help aspiring writers and authors successfully hit their word count for the month. This week, work with an actual published author to craft a character from the ground up at the Character Writing Workshop for Teens, taking place in the Central Library Teen Area on Wednesday, November 15th at 6 p.m. Even more NaNoWriMo events are happening every Wednesday for teens at the Central Library, in addition to daily activities at the Wonderbar Activity Table, also located in the Central Library Teen Area. Stop by anytime during open hours and try your hand at new ways to get those creative juices flowing. All NaNoWriMo events in the Central Library's Teen Area are exclusive to ages 13 to 18. More details for these and additional programs can be found at library.austintexas.gov/events.
This is Ann Minner, Managing Librarian at the Old Quarry Branch. I get to highlight some information for kids this week. Here's something to know. A study from a few years ago points out that reading nonfiction books helps kids develop background knowledge. And that same study showed that background knowledge actually accounts for 33% of the difference in student achievement and helps children reach the appropriate reading levels in later grades. Nonfiction is a great way for kids to develop critical thinking skills and the ability to read complex texts. The capacity to comprehend complex texts is the clearest differentiator in reading between students who are college-ready and students who are not. Kids are interested in lots of things: sports, science, history, even things they haven't discovered yet. Nonfiction is everywhere, and it will spark their curiosity and open their minds to the world. Rows and rows of nonfiction texts are at your nearest Austin Public Library branch. Locations are at library.austintexas.gov/locations. One more thing, please note that the Austin Public Library will be closed on Friday, November 10th in observance of Veterans Day.
The Financial Literacy Coalition of Central Texas improves our community's prosperity by giving Central Texans the knowledge and skills they need to make good financial decisions. We are a trusted, unbiased, and credible source of personal money handling information. We teach subjects such as budgeting, savings, and maintaining good credit. If you believe that a prosperous community benefits everybody, support the Financial Literacy Coalition by going to our website, www.flcct.org.
You're listening to Volumes, the Austin Public Library radio show on Co-op 91.7 FM and KOOP.org. Radio for people, not for profit.
This is Joe,
Martha,
and Lisa,
co-hosts of Writing on the Air.
Do you like to read?
Do you like to write?
We do too, and we love bringing you the best authors and other creative types from Texas and beyond.
Listen to Writing on the Air every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Central Time.
Voted Best Book Discussion in the Austin Chronicle's 2015 Best of Austin.
Wednesday at 6 o'clock p.m.
on 91.7 FM
or KOOP.org.
All right, welcome back to Volumes. Again, we're in the studio with our friend Maggie Bond, Reference Librarian. Before those announcements, we had led in with an excerpt from an interview with John Henry Falk, where he discussed the freedom of speech in America during the era of House of Un-American Activities Committee in the mid-'70s. That was an interview with a Waco, Texas radio station. That audio was provided by the Austin History Center. The complete interview can be heard on APL podcast at library.austintexas.gov/volumes.
Yeah, he says some really good stuff. So now we're going to get back to our conversation with Reference Librarian Maggie Bond, and we're talking about the Romance Book Club. And right before the break, Maggie, you were talking a little bit about sort of like the first couple of book clubs y'all are having, and you mentioned that the first book y'all are reading is kind of like the quintessential romance book, and I was like, well, what does that mean? So do you want to elaborate a little bit?
Well, Romancing the Duke is really fun because in so many ways it's the classic romance novel. It is about a wealthy British duke looking for his duchess. And then in a lot of ways, it really plays with a lot of the conventions of romance novels. So I think that'll be a lot of fun for people that are reading those mass market romances for the first time, or people that are very familiar with all the little conventions and how they're turned on their heads. But I kind of don't want to give things away.
Sure. Yeah, we understand.
Leave us wanting more.
Yes.
So romance novels have existed as a category for quite a long time. Can you talk to us a little bit about how they have evolved to remain relevant?
Yeah, absolutely. Mass market romance novels, as we currently understand them, have existed for about a century, but especially within the last 30 years, they've really changed a lot. Romance authors are dealing with issues of sexuality, gender, consent, all in much, I'm going to just say, better ways than they used to. And that really is mirroring how those concepts are all evolving in mainstream American culture. And that's been really fun to read, even in the 15 years that I've been reading them, and to see how much they've changed. We are also slowly but surely seeing more diversity in general in romance novels. They aren't all British wealthy dukes anymore, just mostly. And so it's really fun because to be a good romance, for a romance novel to be excellent, it has to have two things. It has to, it can't have problems that can be solved in one conversation. And that should just be true of every novel. And it also has to have an ending that really makes you believe in and root for the happily ever after of the two main characters. However, it does not need two characters that are a specific race, sexuality, gender, socioeconomic status, anything, for it to be an amazing romance novel. And I think maybe authors and audiences are just starting to realize that. And I'm really excited to see all the new stuff that's been coming out, especially in not the traditional romance novel genre, but young adult romances and new adult romances have some really great stuff. And we're definitely going to be reading some of those too.
Awesome. Well, so this isn't part of the questions that we came up with ahead of time, but I'm just curious, like, what is your favorite thing about the romance genre?
I love. And like every other person on the planet, who has seen a movie before, I like seeing or reading the same beautiful story over and over and over and all of its different permutations. It's, let's say, stimulating and safe at the same time.
Right.
Yeah,
Nice.
just like kind of a cozy mystery is.
Yeah, totally.
Some harmless escapism.
Yes.
Well, that's what genres are for, right? Is like we want those familiar.
Yeah, we want the conventions, and we want to get one more version of that.
And people play with those conventions, right?
Yeah, my mom recently joked there are only 3 romance novels. There's Wuthering Heights, there's Jane Eyre, and there's Pride and Prejudice, and then there are just constant, like, forever permutations on those three novels, which isn't, I mean, I could argue with that, but it's mostly right.
I mean, it comes down to the basics of human nature, right?
Yeah,
At some point.
Absolutely.
And we're all not that much different from each other, especially when it comes down to love, depression, and longing.
Desire.
Yeah, desire, longing.
So what books are you actually like currently reading, and what excited you about them?
In my personal life or for, well, right now I am currently reading a couple different romances by one author, and I won't tell you her name, but hopefully she will be coming to the Romance Book Club to talk with us in person. So I'm trying to decide which book we're going to discuss with her. And then I'm also starting a true crime book club that is starting in January with another fantastic reference librarian named Julie. We're both murderinos. And so I just get to talk about romance and murder every month. I'm so excited.
Can you just do like romance
like
murder
the
hybrid
sexiest
book club?
So I'm reading at least one book, which of course I can't remember the name of, to consider for that book club as well.
Some of the true crime books are just continuations to your love stories, right? Where they don't end happily ever after, and
yeah, that's
in
terrible
a loose
and
sense.
true.
So if you guys are listeners or just joining us, this is Volumes, the Austin Public Library radio show, and we're giggling about romance here on Co-op 91.7 FM, and we're also streaming at koop.org. And there's details about this show on the website, the library's website at library.austintexas.gov/volumes. And this is Maggie Bond, who's a reference librarian, and she's telling us all about the Romance Book Club, which is starting up at the New Central Library next week. Yeah. So, well, I guess before we get into the details about the book club next week, can you tell us where in the New Central Library does the romance collection live? Because I've heard that it has moved around over time from like the old,
Yes, it is in a different place now than it was when you may have visited the Falk Central Library. Now it is all just in the general fiction, which is on the 4th floor of the New Central Library. But if what you really want to do is browse for those mass market romance paperbacks, then they should be pretty easy to spot. They all have a certain look about them. So it shouldn't be too hard to find them. And of course, you can find a librarian like me and we can point you in the right direction or find you some recommendations.
So somewhere on the 4th floor.
The south area of the 4th floor near the 4th floor reading room.
I love the specificity.
Yeah. So look for the sun.
Awesome.
So are we still marking the romance novels on the spines? I know when I had worked at a branch, we had gone through a series of marking policies, a little red dot, and then we had some sticker labels.
There's still absolutely some of those left over, but we are no longer doing that. I actually, before we moved to the New Central Library, I personally went through every romance paperback that we have to decide whether or not to keep it. And so the romance collection is nice and fresh right now. But there are certainly still some books that have stood the test of time a little better than others, and so you'll see those stickers every now and again. But don't rely on those to tell you whether or not something is a romance anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Just look for a title and a
just look for bright colors and women wearing beautiful dresses on the covers, on the fronts.
Do they still do like
Bodice
lifestyle
rippers.
paintings of like super greasy models?
You know, you're more likely to see a woman on the cover of a romance novel now than a man, which
Oh,
wasn't
interesting.
always the
Yeah.
case. I think that's really interesting.
Because I really, my reference comes, I mean, obviously I've seen them at the library handling materials, but my mother read them, and that's what I remember, is there were always some guy in some frilly shirt, like the Seinfeld frilly shirt.
Yep, Seinfeld frilly shirt, absolutely. And my mother read them too, which is how I started reading them, was sneaking piles of them out of her room into mine.
Yeah,
And
my
just
dad
going
had
through 3 in a
different books
day.
that I stole.
I think that, like, I have a similar experience, except I was at my aunt's house, and me and all my cousins got a hold of a pile of them and sat in the garage and read them out loud to each other, giggling the whole time, like, oh my goodness.
Much like now.
Yes. And I'm sure that so many people who come to the Romance Book Club are going to have a similar story. It's true.
It's so much fun, and some paper.
Yeah. But we are going to be playing some games during the club, and one of them is certainly going to be judge a book by its cover. There are some
It's probably
ridiculous
the one genre you can do that with,
romance
for sure.
covers out there. Absolutely, there are. And I do think that they've gotten better recently, just like the perhaps politics behind the books themselves or gender politics behind the books themselves. But I do think that there was kind of a golden age in the 1980s where there were lots of holographic covers on romance novels and like 3D where you could kind of turn them and the images would move. There was some fun stuff.
New print technology they were just trying out.
They're just trying it out. They're just throwing it at the wall, seeing what stuck.
So are there a lot of like crossover genres within romance? Like, I mean, like, for instance, sci-fi and then romance, and then do you have like monsters romance?
Absolutely. There is sci-fi and romance. There's a lot more paranormal romance, and we're going to be reading all of it, basically.
Awesome.
We're
Well,
getting into it all.
Real quick, before we run out of time, can you remind us again where and when and what to expect for next week's new book club?
Yes.
Romance book club.
The second Tuesday of every month, starting on November 14th, 6:30 p.m., either the roof garden or what we like to call the living room on the 6th floor. You're going to find us, I promise. And no homework next week.
Yeah.
And so the living room is, if it's too cold or too wet out on the rooftop, y'all will move into the living room area.
Which is directly next door. And there are windows that show you who is in either area. So we're going to be findable. Oh, and look for Fabio, of course.
Oh, of course. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that
so-
should just be your standard beacon from here
Just
out.
look for Fabio.
Look for Fabio.
So the new Central Library is located at 710 West Cesar Chavez, and we hope to see lots of folks at the Romance Book Club. Details about this show are online at library.austintexas.gov/volumes. I want to mention that Veterans Day holiday is going to be observed on Friday, which means the library will be closed this Friday, November 10th, but we will be open Saturday and Sunday. So we'll be open on actual Veterans Day, which is Saturday. So just, don't come Friday, and we're open on Saturday and Sunday. What else do you want to say? Details. Oh, there is a link on the website, the library.austintexas.gov/volumes, with titled Recommended on the Air, which will have details about books that are recommended by our guests. So we'll get Maggie to add some of her favorite romance novels to that
Ooh la
list.
la.
Ooh. So thanks a lot for coming in, Maggie Bond. Reference
Yeah, it was a lot of
Librarian.
fun.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
And we want to thank our hardworking volunteers, Federico Pacheco, and this week, Pat Carr also helped us out with this episode.
Thanks, Pat.
Stay tuned to 91.7 FM and coop.org for rock and roll pest control.
We'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to Volumes, the Austin Public Library radio show. Special thanks to our producer, DJ Harris, and to the musicians who composed and performed our original theme song, Andrew Noble on violin, Kirk Duvall on guitar, and Mike Wheat on percussion. And thanks to you, our listeners. Volumes, the Austin Public Library radio show, airs Wednesday afternoons at 2:30 on Co-op 91.7 FM and koop.org. If you catch us mid-show, full episodes and other details can be found at library.austintexas.gov/volumes.